Hello, hello, and welcome everybody to our Codex webinar about especially shipping code with Codex in the enterprise. So today we want to give direction on what to cover and what to care for when rolling out Codex in the enterprise. But before we get ahead of ourselves, Marc, who are you?
Yeah, nice to meet you, everyone. Pleased to meet everyone to join this call. Thanks, André, for welcoming me. So, I'm Marc Montanari. I'm a solution engineer based in a London office at OpenAI. As part of my role, I'm supporting our partners, such as obviously the statworx team, when it comes to developing your skills, the skills of those partners, working with them on joint customers opportunity that we have, and in particular at the moment working a lot on Codex, which is like our flagship product that is really changing how we're working at the moment.
Right. Yeah, this is exactly what we want to discuss today. So I'm André. I'm leading our innovation department here at statworx. We are data and AI consultancy based in Germany, in Frankfurt. And in my role, I'm also heavily developing with Codex and agentic coding to build internal tooling and to use that to, for example, also get rid of some SaaS services that we are using and building them from scratch. So this is very exciting times to be in. I've also, let's say, used agentic coding since the beginning. So I'm heavily using it since 2 years, and now I'm a happy Codex user. And yes, so for today, what you can expect is that first Marc will give a brief demo about Codex and the functionalities, so everybody is aware. And then, by the way, or along the way, we will also discuss enterprise usage and what to care for, what to look out for. Yes, so Marc, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to show you like a couple of slides really to intro, but my goal, as you said, like is really to get into the demo and be able to have like a conversation around those one. And it's really to kind of set the scene and explain, because there have been like the past, let's say 3-4 years, really a tremendous change in terms of the way people are coding, and you kind of like alluded to that. So we really moved from like a classic kind of a first iteration with GitHub where it was at code completion when you click on tab on your keyboard to be able like to complete a partially code. We had like a second phase of pair programming, and really now we are in an agentic delegation kind of phase, and as a developer like becoming more orchestrator overall. And as really like from our point of view, there's three big pillars and the powering those aspects. The first one is obviously like the models that we have, GPT 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. Obviously the goal is like faster, more efficient. And I really remember like with my colleagues speaking when 5.2 Codex came, how it really became a reality as a developer to be able to change the way we are working. And now with like 5.4 and the next generation that is going to be released in a couple of days, is really about like how this is like going deeper into more functionalities, going deeper into more of like abilities to do design, etc. on that. And the second part is like agentic delegation. So some of you might know this guy on the left. His name is Peter Steinberger. He's the creator of OpenCloud. And you can see on the screen like the number of terminals he has open. So that's like the cutting edge developers, like being able to context switch between different like tasks between different terminals. And the idea of Codex, and in particular the Codex app that you have here on the right and that we're going to explore together, is being able to have those multiple tasks being run at the same time. And as I was mentioning before, and as it's kind of like the title of this episode is like as working as an orchestrator, not being like a pure developer, but being able to orchestrate and delegate those tasks overall. And the third one is like around SDLC, and that's really why where I would like to stress today, the point is not only here Codex or any coding agents here to write some codes for you. It should help you across the entire SDLC. I think there is like a study which shows like developers spend like 16 to 20% coding in the build phase, so the second step. But obviously, the rest of your work, the rest of developer work, like goes across the entire SDLC pipeline. So that's where we really see having Codex plugged in each and every part of the SDLC pipeline and helping you along the way is super important. So a couple of demos here are going to help in that extent today. And just before I enter the demo, I think it's super important here to point out is, and we discussed that so many times with André for themselves as statworx, but also for their customers, is like enterprise grade security. So first, there is no training on your data. You own the input and output. There is like deep analytics, obviously like full observability on the different surfaces you're going to use. I'm going to demo with Codex app, but there is Codex CLI in the IDE, there is in the cloud, there is code review. So there is really different surfaces. And also super important, obviously, from enterprise perspective, like OS sandboxing as well. And last but not least, not on this slide, but another one which is obviously important is around obviously around EU data residency, which is something we can obviously provide overall. All right, so with that, I'm going to jump into Codex. I don't know, in case, please, André, feel free to interrupt me.
Yes. Just for everyone, you can ask questions in the chat also. So we will touch on questions after our content. But feel free to anyway ask away. We will then cover the questions afterwards. Yes, I mean, also as you are prepping, Marc, it's also very interesting to see that not only in the SLDC along the pipeline, also Codex facilitates project management and other work that you can do, which is maybe also prior to entering this pipeline, and not only planning tasks but also facilitating.
Yes.
The Scrum process and whatnot. So there's really a lot Codex can offer along the whole journey, and that's quite amazing. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking about planning, I guess that will be the first one I can show you with Codex. So this is a Codex app here. Just to situate everyone. So the way it works is Codex, obviously, it's a model on its own, but it's also like a harness and its different surfaces to be able to interact. Think about ChatGPT is obviously a surface, and the GPT-4, GPT-5, GPT like whatever model are obviously the model behind it and powering everything. What we have here, and as I was kind of alluded earlier, so you're going to be able to work on different projects. So for example, I have the Codex project, I have the agent desk demo project that I want to work on, and I can go and kick off some tasks. So here I'm working on my agent desk project. And I'm going to start, as you were saying, like planning, but first I want to understand what I'm looking at as a repository. I have the tendency now, I kind of like not typing everything, so I'm going to start to dictate and ask Codex a couple of things. So, hey Codex, can you explain me the architecture and functionalities of this repository, please? And also here I can obviously go and select the different level of reasoning. So we can touch on that a bit later on, but here is very kind of like low level type of reasoning I will need, or medium. The idea is like, I just need to review the agents MD file or the README file to give me like the right information about that to that extent. And while it's like working on this part, so there is a couple of things I want to point out as well is I'm running Codex locally here, but I can go and delegate some tasks in the cloud if necessary. And obviously I can switch to different branches. I can look at different models that might be necessary or interesting for me in this case. So here, like the series of models that might be the one I want. And we can obviously see like chain of thought. So there is a couple of comments that Codex go ahead and run on its own. So it's reading like different pages here in this case, and able like to figure out what is kind of the repository about overall and how it can help me on that. If in your repository, in this case, that's not the case, like you have agents MD files, that will be like the one usually it will look at specifically to better understand and extract the right information. While it's still running on that, unfortunately, it hasn't finished. Let me go ahead and go for a second task, like in parallel, to make sure I can get started. But first, let me show you what we're going to use as kind of like application we're looking at. So that's my agent desk support. It's like a vibe coded application we have done a couple of days ago. And the idea is like I have a couple of like ticket inbox, I have my tickets, I have an admin panel, of course, etc. So all the kind of aspect that you can imagine as like application you're doing for web or for mobile app, etc. And the goal is to work on a couple of task bugs, etc. that we might have. But for example, I might want to discuss about planning a feature. So to your point, André, earlier about planning functionalities overall. All right, Codex, can you use the demo Slack MCP to help me plan out the new tags feature that we were just discussing? And I'd like to plan it from a product manager's perspective point of view to understand the sizing and the option involved in this case. And as we are discussing about plans, so there is a plan mode as well. So it's really going to focus on that and help you to look how to best go based on this current repository, or this can be done. But the second part was that we discussed about the demo Slack MCP, and you can see is using the demo Slack. And the reason is, and that's the power of it, is like being able to connect to different, and actually I'm going to show you from the MCP section here, where because it's a demo environment, I have like an observability tool, a pager, a Slack, but also Figma, Linear, etc. So that means you can really enhance the capabilities of Codex to go out and use the tools that are necessary to make its work overall. All right, let's switch back very quickly on the repository. So you can see, been scanning for a minute. It looked at what are the three, from a high level, the three main layers, the UI, the API, and the data storage, reference on the different pages, etc., etc. So as like I get into a project, it's very easy to get into it and explore it and understand as well. As is still planning the tag feature, I'm going to switch to a thread I already seen and finish overall. So you can see it provided like me the scoping option with different option A, option B, option C if necessary, the different phases I want to have and do overall. Actually, waiting response from my part. We are doing planning, so there might be some back and forth, and that's where it's quite powerful. Like it's just like giving Codex a task or a ask, and it goes off, and you don't have control. So this is actually the opposite. So here is asking which planning framework might be interesting. So I'm going to use a recommended one, and I'm also going to use the sizing and option PM trade-off matrix as well, and it can go and continue on this part.
The interviewing is also a very cool tool to really learn Codex and really get used to it, because I really did this in the beginning a lot to just play back and forth. The iterating helps really a lot on making up myself also on what I really want to do. Codex is really smart in what the options are and what the surface is to expose back. And I think it's pretty good to learn and simply also be more precise on what you actually want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree on that. And yeah, so we have the plan here. recommendation options. In this case, I'm going to skim through it very quickly. Here for plan B, but obviously as it's kind of like knows what should be the best practices here, like test and acceptance scenarios. So he's going to take that into consideration as he wants on this case. And he can ask and go and say, okay, I want to implement this plan. So it goes off on this part, and I'm going to move to another part of my SDLC pipeline. And we're going to look at the design aspect here. So I was mentioning the MCP part. So another part is like the community of connectors. So to illustrate this part, I'm going to show you an example where someone from the design team, so is implementing, that's why this is off at the moment, but that's not a problem. Someone from my design team shared with me this Figma design. So if you remember, we were looking at some tickets with like open, close, etc. Here's a different one, obviously. We're looking at like balance rate, but I like some of the aspects of the design from this one, and I'm going to select one of the nodes, for example, here, and I'm going to copy this URL, and I will want basically Codex to implement the spirit of the design, if I could say, in this case. So I'm going to basically, again, ask Codex to implement this one. So I'm going to basically say, for example, with the Figma implement design skill, and I will touch on that after, to please implement the following design. I'm going to say specifically here that's an option that we have here. So I want to have it without code concept connect, sorry. And it has to be like implemented in the ticket inbox. Well, Figma design, I don't think I need specifically on that, but let's do it. So here I'm using a skill that we have here, and that's kind of extend to the point of like plugins as well. So you can see here is like looking at my Figma. So if I go and click on plugins, we have two important concepts here, the plugins and the skills. So the plugins is literally like being able to connect to external services or internal services within your organization, for example. And skills is basically indication how workflow process should be executed based on best practices, etc. So there is a couple of ones. So the one we use, for example, for Figma, the Figma implement design is one that is personal. So that's one I used specifically for myself. And the way it works is it's basically an MD file with a couple of important instruction, prerequisites, review workflow, the different steps to implement, like here calling the Figma URL, etc., or to make it happen overall. And basically those skills can make call and reference basically specific plugin if necessary. So imagine like Slack, so I don't know why it's not loading here. So Slack, Salesforce, or like here we have computer use as another skill if necessary as well. And another thing I could share with you, I think is quite interesting, is like a kind of a curated bank of skills you can leverage. So you can see this is open source from OpenAI. You can also send us the skills you think you have developed and are extremely valuable for the community. So we can see a couple of Figma skills that we have, develop a web game, why not, if it's necessary, linear, Notion, etc., etc. I don't know on your side, André, like if there is specific skills and specific connectors you've been using lately that are super important.
I think it's very important, and it's also maybe a challenge for enterprises and also organizations to build also their own skills, like aside from things that are open source, like, I don't know, using or working with PDF files, like having a connection there, or linear or tools. I think it's a challenge for organization to really build this on their own, because there might be really specific things which are very important for this organization only.
Yeah.
And that's also what you can, of course, do, right? So you can write your skills, you can create them maybe centrally, and then you can distribute them with Codex to everyone. So that's really powerful. And these can be, I don't know, skills on how to work with a specific enterprise system, enterprise application that's very specific and not out there, curated by open source. But that's very, very important. And also something that we are doing, having rounds and expert rounds on discussing which skills we could use and leverage to facilitate our work. And I can only recommend also starting this in every organization, because skills are really powerful. And it really makes sense to just discuss this.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if how you've been maybe sharing some of the skills with your team, if there is some of them that you have.
And you mean like for sharing for everyone, or just for our team?
Yeah,
sharing
for your team.
So, okay, so things that we are using or building is especially building slides. So this is something that is very important, and we are doing a lot, of course. And sometimes also PowerPoint is a bottleneck there, and this is something that we are creating. But also skills like just testing frameworks. So something that we have built, and that it is very important also, and that's also playing into the discussion we will have in a bit, is to build a framework for our company with many regards. Skills is just one, and plugins is just one part of the equation. Also permissions on what Codex can do automatically and what it cannot do automatically, and has to ask for permissions. So we are building this framework and let's say ship it to everyone, so that we can also align ourselves on how we work with Codex. And again, skills is just one equation where everyone can curate and participate.
Cool. No, definitely. Same as well. So while you were speaking about that, so you can see one of the feature, actually the second one is also done now. So you can obviously see the diffs. So either here in this space specifically, so we can see here for the root.ts, he has it added like 23 lines, or you can see the diff, the complete diff here as well, if necessary. Or you can even go like and comment, I don't know, I don't like the name of this function, etc. I'm not going to do here, but that means you can comment, review your code, and have Codex work on that one. As you can see, so far I haven't written any line of code, right? That really changed my job overall. All right, so that was like, we looked at planning, we looked at design, implementing the design aspect. So you can see like it started to implement this part. Another one is like the classic building. So we know it's extremely, like this kind of model is extremely capable at building on that. So I'm going to ask here in my admin panel to add basically an export PDF option from this admin page, so I can share with maybe my leadership those one. Hey Codex, can you implement a new export PDF button functionality that will be at the top right of the admin page? So that could be like a starting point, but I want to go further with all of you, like kind of like some tips that we could imagine. So how can we make sure like you can get better at prompting in this case? And this is where Codex Excel, obviously, if you want to draw like a clear alignment with Vue, is like being able to do some back and forth, like in conversation if necessary. So you are prompted, but I could add, for example, before you go too far, maybe ask me 2 or 3 questions in a back and forth to clarify about the approach, and you are sure to reach 90% of clarity before you proceed at implementing the functionality. So that could be same idea, right? The goal is really to iterate. It's really interesting when I see now in the office some of my colleagues, they literally whisper to their computer now all the time. That's very interesting how like the developer mindset has changed in this case as well. All right, so we had 3 questions. All right, for the first question, yes, I want to be like a printable snapshot of the current admin page, and it has to be a page kind of format. Second question, use your best judgment. And third question, I don't need to add something narrower. So I went very quickly to read through those questions, but obviously you can imagine like in a non kind of webinar setup, I will take a bit more time and maybe have a bit more exchange around that. And now Codex. So this should client side for rendering. Yes, let's do client side rendering in this case. And Codex can go ahead and do this part. While he's working on that, I want to make sure we continue and optimize the time on our side. There is like, maybe I'm going to focus on one that is extremely common in across like the engineering community, in particular, if you have like solution or you're running a business which is kind of critical, is when you receive a page in the middle of the night. So we created a quick button here, a trigger incident. In the background is basically generating some obviously noisy logs and metrics that brings into a fake database as kind of like a fake website in this case. And I'm going to leverage Codex to help me with this page to triage this page in this case. As you know, humans, we are very bad at reading logs. This is like my worst fear, to be honest. But also, like as you can imagine, like context switching across different tools that might bring you like the information necessary for you to treat that. So triage page is like a skill that was created here in this case to be able to reach to first like acknowledge, get the page, acknowledge the page. So we can see here like he's getting the page. I think he's going to acknowledge this one, and he's going to retrieve like metrics from observability metrics. So if you remember, we had like an MCP to answer that in at that extent, demo observability here. So it will retrieve this information. And the good thing is like as part of the skill is going to give me the root cause, give an assessment, and some recommendation in how this could be improved as well. I don't know on your side, André, if this is something you've been implementing to some degree with a skill, with another tool, with an extension.
No, not that I'm aware
Not
of.
yet.
Not yet. Yeah, that's actually a very, very good idea. But connecting to I don't know, Jira and whatnot, or GitHub issues, I think that's a good direction. But I think we haven't wired this yet. But that's a good point. Just also regarding time, Marc, I think we should wrap it up, and also yeah, feel free to share, of course, now that Codex has implemented it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really quickly, so we can see very first like example, very basic as a design, but like it was extremely fast to implement to that extent. And I mean, to wrap on this part, I think like we looked at different aspects, like we've done like obviously exploration of the repo. And as you were mentioning, like this is something that is iterative and very good that you're doing a lot. Another part we've done is around the design. Another part we looked at is around here the deployment and maintainability with like tracking. Sorry, I can't find my words. Tracking like a bug or tracking like a page in this case. And we obviously had the build phase. So if you remember the part where I was showing like the different stages of the SDLC, how you can collaborate with Codex, this is where we have like a complementary aspect, and this is where you can have that done. The very last one I want to very quickly show is how, if you don't mind me taking slightly more time on that, is I had here, sorry for switching, but like another project, which is a Codex project, basically Codex is open source overall. So this is a repo of Codex that we have open source. So you can see what are the different pull requests, issues, etc. that the community, but also our developers internally are doing. What we have, maybe I have one in this case, you can see my colleagues like on a daily basis are literally calling Codex. So this is part of like the other surface I was mentioning earlier. So calling Codex within GitHub to say, review this, Codex connector is going to look into it, potentially find some bugs, etc., and work on that for you. So review commit, etc., etc. So you can have like, again, on the rest of the part of your SDLC pipeline, have a full integration and a full kind of collaboration and acceleration in terms of how you're developing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know you want to also share your screen on your side.
Yes, just yeah, thank you for the intro to also see the capabilities. So I think we have all seen on what Codex is, let's say, capable of. But one, of course, challenge, and this is also the topic of the webinar, right, is on how to also use Codex in an enterprise setting. So we are receiving a lot of questions which go along the lines of how can I make sure that developer A is coding the same way with Codex as developer B? How do we ensure quality? How do we make sure that people are not building the same features, essentially, because Codex can be so quick. It can happen that people are building the same thing in parallel, as you have seen also the terminal or the setup from Peter Steinberg. This can happen quite fast, and there are some core challenges which I wanted to just demonstrate and show here, and these are dimensions to be, let's say, clarified along the way when using Codex and also rolling it out in an enterprise setting. So agentic standard, so something that I've also touched on earlier, is to build a framework on how to develop with Codex. So this means essentially brought down to how do we do like shared settings? Do we have a repository where we have settings that we can share with the whole company or with the team, such that everybody is really aligned? How do we do Git practices, pre-commits? Everything is changing with agentic AI. You can do a lot, like having a lot of good security layer on top of Codex, which you can align also. Then the next one is platform and repo enablement. So in the enterprise, it's not the case that you are building prototypes and whatnot. You also want to use Codex for really complex products that you have, or software that you have built. And here also it can be, let's say, a no-brainer to just simply jump with Codex on the task, and it succeeds. But oftentimes, if things are very complicated and you have complex structures, it makes sense to also enable these repositories that you have and make them, let's say, agentic ready. And by building agents MD and refining them, by building documentation, which is more, let's say, not laid out for humans, but for agents, nesting these agents MD files at various levels to pull in information only when you need it. So this is something that definitely also makes sense to tackle. Of course, governance, we have Marc, you have already, let's say, laid out on the security concepts, but governance is something that has to be clarified for every organization when rolling out some tools like Codex. So this is something, of course, something to discuss and clarify up front. And of course, the most important thing is to enable people and to have a change management setting that is actually working, because you can throw Codex at everyone, and it needs some time of adaptation. It's something that developers are also not used to in a classical sense. So here it makes sense to do that, and also do that in a fashion that is role-based as touched. So these are core challenges that need to be clarified. I also want to, let's say, just give everyone here, let's say, a quick checklist on what to cover. when deciding whether to roll out Codex or use Codex in their enterprise and organization. So clarify governance and compliance processes. This takes most of the time. So clarify that upfront, discuss policies and approvals and guardrails. Then it also makes sense to maybe run a pilot to see and also measure the impact. So there are a lot of KPIs out there that you might want to use. For example, how does Codex change the PR throughput of developers? How much lead time do we have from, let's say, planning a feature to really having it in production? So these are things that can be also measured in a pilot to solve also the ROI question. And also, as mentioned, it makes sense to have training also in a role-based fashion. It's not only developers who are profiting off of Codex, it's also product owners and project managers who can leverage Codex. So this is something definitely to also keep in mind. Then defining the coding standards for your team, discuss on which hooks, permissions, how to do agents MD, how to share skills. So this needs to be an open discussion, and people need to participate and talk about this. The repositories, scan them. Does it make sense to have mono repos or poly repos set up in your case? This is also something that needs to be discussed. How do we document in the age of agentic AI and Codex? And on the overall structure. And again, bringing people together, this is really where we think also for us, this has worked quite well. Just exchanging on what people are doing there. It's more or less wild west out there on what you can use with Codex, what are plugins, what are workflows. There's, let's say, essentially every 10 minutes you can find something new, someone come up with something to build on top of Codex, which you can use as a workflow. So it makes sense to gather the people and discuss this and then decide whether to also roll out things along the team or in the company. Before we maybe touch the questions, Marc, how are you using Codex at OpenAI? Maybe this is also a question that a lot of people have.
Yeah, we also tend to start to do some session OpenAI on the Codex side. I think there is different aspects. So first, obviously, the internal developer community, and this is like a reality that a good 90% of the code being written is Codex code now. So Codex is writing his own code, but also like the code for infrastructure, the code for like preparing the training of our new models, etc., are being like generated by Codex, which means if you think about like, I think in the past, if I'm correct, the past 12 months, we doubled the number of employees on the engineering side, but we multiplied by 6 the number of PR when it comes to that aspect. So that showcased like a level of productivity gain. So the other part of how we're using Codex internally. So obviously across the entire SDLC, as kind of like I started to highlight. The other part is I've been absolutely blown away to see non-coders, individuals really leveraging Codex. So people in global affairs, individuals as part of the go-to-market team, like the account directors, basically being able to have every morning Codex with different skills and the plugins, review Slack, review the emails, classify which one are the most critical to answer quickly, and potentially have some bullet point drafted for like to prepare answers. So is not only kind of for the coding community, and this is absolutely like this is so interesting on that aspect, I would say, like bluntly on this part.
Yeah, the same here. Like also, we are using it for so non-technical people, and it's really amazing on what you can achieve and how this transforms actual knowledge work, you could say. That's very interesting. Before we dive into questions, I would just also like to share our shared offering from OpenAI and statworx. So you can apply for your enterprise or your organization for Codex Unlimited. So OpenAI is sponsoring 4 weeks of Codex for free, essentially, for your organization. You can follow the QR code here, but we will also post the link in the channel. How it would play out is that you can experience, of course, Codex firsthand, and statworx will also support with yes, let's say with KPI design that you can really measure on what Codex is offering you for that limited amount of time, what the ROI is, and how Codex within this time already is transforming and how you develop. Okay, so but having said this, let's go into some questions. So I've been browsing a bit here through some questions. Let's maybe also start from the bottom. There's some question around benchmarking tools. So, for example, different ones, Replit versus Claude Design, Claude Code versus Codex Cursor. Is this something probably OpenAI is doing that internally? Not sure if you can speak about this. Maybe from our side, we are also doing that and evaluating tools all the time and their functionality. There's not, let's say, we are doing not in such a way that we have an internal benchmark for these kind of tools. But it's definitely something that is where there's lots of material also out there to read, and there are a lot of benchmarks, official benchmarks, and other benchmarks you can track and follow. Yes, as from just my experience, and again, I'm using Codex, let's say, day by day, and not only Codex, but Codex is for me right now the best experience and the best workflow, and especially, let's say, when doing nothing, like just having plain Codex gets you really far without doing the whole kind of customization. And that's really, really strong, because with a lot of other tools, you have to, let's say, do a lot of work, some work to get to the same quality. Any words on that?
I mean, obviously, as you can imagine, like every company benchmarks this thing. So obviously, we're looking at the competition. We advancing the product to make sure like we really give the best functionality to our customers. I'm going to drop so it's Martin asking the question. I'm going to drop one or two links. One link that I think is fantastic, which is around harness engineering, and this is like kind of like to give like a bird's eye view to see where we are heading and why Codex is really different on that spectrum. Hopefully, I don't know, André, if the one I shared in our chat is also shared with everyone else. I think it's a very good article, and it's really about like not specifically the functionalities, one by one functionalities, but how like what we call the harness around Codex is really changing the paradigm to that aspect and making sure like it's really helping across the different surfaces as I was mentioning before. And from our point of view, like this is the most important. This is like the most long-term investment we're making, because we know that feature is not only it's important, but like having the right harness and having the right models obviously be underpinning that is extremely important to make it like the most powerful here. Hopefully I didn't took too much time on this question.
Okay. I think we have maybe just room for one, but everyone who's asked a question, we will stick around here and answer in the chat or in the Q&A. We will answer your question. Unfortunately, we just have 1 minute left. What is the workflow for reviewing code changes? So that's actually a good question. So what I like to do is to also try to do it with 2 Codex sessions. So having one executor and another Codex task, which is reviewing the code, slightly nudging the second Codex task with a prompt to be, let's say, critiqueful and to really look at the in depth on the changes and especially what the task was, to give it a small nudge in the prompt to be more mindful and critiqueful, and also and this is what I really like to do, to prompt it in a way that it isn't code bloat, right? So what happens, what can happen quite often is also that code is added and added and added, but nothing is, let's say, reviewed or refactored. So having some boundaries here for reviewing code or a workflow, I find it very useful to also nudge it in a way. Isn't there a simpler choice, or isn't there a simpler version of this change that won't bloat our code base? Yes. Marc, anything to add on this? Do you have a specific workflow to recommend?
It's pretty much complementary to what you said, I would say overall. This is like really deeply used now internally by our engineering team. So it's really like as partnering with Codex for the engineering team on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Then we have another question here. Sorry, I was just widely going through them,
Yeah.
not randomly picking. So how do you see the UI for managing agents evolving? Now, since OpenAI released Codex with the sidebar UI pattern, everyone is copying it. But in your opinion, how do you think it will evolve in the future? Will it abstract even more the development part to empower more non-technical users? That's a very interesting one. Marc, do you want to start?
So I'm curious to get your take from outside. I think from inside, I mean, I was mentioning earlier the fact that I see a lot of non-technical users starting to use Codex. They obviously need more support because the Codex app is already like a massive step forward in terms of simplifying how you can build and develop. But there is still some needs like to help like people in particular when you need to do some specific troubleshooting, like how to use a terminal, for example, explaining the concept around gates like the diff, etc. So
Yes.
I definitely think that there is like a UI part that is going to evolve. I would say it's like a personal opinion on that, but I feel like this is a logical direction as the person asked, try to find where is the name, but we might go towards like another level of abstraction to add on help on this part. Yeah, I don't know from your point of view what
So
you
maybe
see.
my take, I think what is really amazing is that Codex is available on so many surfaces, because I think everybody is also using this differently, right? So for me personally, I'm a CLI person. I have my terminals open, so my workflow more or less looks like the one from Peter Steinberg. I have a lot of terminals open, and I really also like it this way. The Codex app is amazing. I really find it amazing. But it's just not for me. So it's really cool to have these different ways on how to work with Codex. Let's say, maybe in the future, I can imagine, so this is my personal take, and in the future, I can imagine that the level of abstraction gets even further, and Codex, the Codex app will at some point, I'm talking here future, will at some point also be a native OS or an operating system like interaction, because this is more or less the intermediate layer that you have right now. You're interacting with Codex on your computer. At some point, probably you will just interact with your computer directly, or the agents are your computer. So that's very futuristic, but I think this could be a direction this is evolving.
I mean, we just to complement on that, I think it's fantastic. We just released computer use into Codex, so that means you can prompt Codex to basically take control of your computer for certain non-risky tasks, of course. So there is a path in that direction, as you point out. I would say this is an example, at least.
Perfect. So I think we will just do one last questions, and sorry guys to span it here, but there's one task from Martin as well. Do you actually use the vibe-coded ITSM solution for collecting, resolving, analyzing IT tickets?
I mean, this is one I created like a couple of days ago. That's obviously non-production ready, this one. But it's really to illustrate, like it's, I'm going to be transparent. The last 2 weeks, we've been doing some hackathon with some of our partners, and we gave them 4 hours to hack, and presented everything at the end. Obviously, those solutions were not production ready. We all agree with that. But it's fantastic to see how much power they got in terms of maturing an idea and testing the outcome overall. That still requires a lot of work, a lot of energy to go to production for whatever solution that was presented by those partners, but it's a fantastic step forward already, like in terms of capabilities. Yeah.
All right, then I think we will close it. Any open questions we will answer in the chat. Thanks for joining, everyone, and hope you had a fun time. Feel free also to add us on LinkedIn, and we can also discuss there further, Marc and myself. Yes, thanks for joining, and have a nice week.
Thank you.